How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the next episode of Movie Talk. I'm Matt, joined by Connor. We got a lot to talk about today. We're actually not just talking about one movie.
Yeah. You told me we are talking a little bit about the new Captain America movie, though. So.
Yes, we're going to start with a review of Captain America: Brave New World, and then we are going to talk a little bit about the Superman trailer, just because we had a lot of thoughts about it, and honestly, it's a trailer that I'm conflicted about, but excited about. But we'll get to it when we get to it.
I'm looking forward to that because that's probably my most anticipated movie as of right now. Granted, I don't know any other movies coming out past July. So.
I'm only looking at July, and before that, nothing else.
July is gonna be a packed month, so I'm gonna say goodbye to my savings there. So.
Yeah, there are a lot of movies coming out this summer. 2025 is kind of turning into similar 2015, whereas 2015 was just so many movies back to back to back.
Oh, I remember 2015. That was a good time. That's unfortunately that's not that topic today.
No, it's not that topic today.
Maybe
but
we'll cover it next time.
Yeah. But Captain America: Brave New World is, of course, the fourth Captain America movie. It stars Anthony Mackie, Harrison Ford, and some other Marvel characters that I'm sure you've seen in the trailer. And this is the first Captain America movie that follows Sam Wilson, not Steve Rogers. And Anthony Mackie is taking on the role of Captain America after the events of Endgame and the events of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And so this movie kind of directly follows those events. And let's check out that trailer.
Wilson. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for the invite, sir. I have to admit, I'm still getting used to the new look.
They said lose the mustache or lose the election. You and I haven't always agreed in the past, but I want to make another run at making Captain America an official military position.
And if we disagree on how to manage this situation, then what happens?
Work with me, Sam. We'll show the world a better way forward.
Sir, your inner circle has been compromised. Either you can't see that, or you don't want to.
What if it's a trap? Global power is shifting. You're just a pawn.
You may be Captain America, but you're not Steve Rogers.
You're right. I'm not.
All right, so Captain America: Brave New World. Before we jump into the review, I would just quickly say you actually haven't seen this movie yet.
Not fully. No, I've seen enough to know the general premise of the movie or all the major stuff. So
Yeah, it's kind of hit a point with Marvel fandom where, people like us, when we started back in like 2008 with Iron Man and our excitement with that, it's gone so long, I feel like, where sometimes a movie will come out and I really don't want to pay to go see it or do that or spend the time to go see it. I'd rather just watch a YouTube video, see what happens in the Marvel story and move on. So I kind of get that.
So it's funny you mentioned that because for a while before, I think it was around the time when Infinity War or Endgame was coming out, I was the type of person that would see every Marvel movie in theaters. I think the only one I didn't see in theaters, I think it was either Spider-Man Homecoming or Thor Ragnarok, which both are good movies, but I was just so burnt out by them, so I was just like, I need something a little bit more refreshing.
Yeah.
And so now with a lot of Marvel movies coming out, I'll see specific ones or specific projects. I've missed a lot of them at this point.
Yeah.
The last one I think I saw in theaters was Deadpool and Wolverine, and they had They had the Echo and Agatha show that came out, which I watched Echo because it had
Vincent and yeah.
They had the guy who played Kingpin in Daredevil. I'm a big fan of the show, which go check out the TV show. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But not Echo, Daredevil. But
yes, 100%.
I need to specify.
Yeah,
that,
Echo was fairly disappointing.
It exists. That's all.
It exists. It exists.
Yeah, I mean, right now with all the Marvel movies, it's just a lot of them just seem they just have like. You can only crank out so many movies that have the same premise, and again with this new one that came out,
Yeah.
a lot of the major things I heard was that it's just Falcon and Winter Soldier minus Bucky.
So, yes and no. The thing I can say, at least about that, is the arc in terms of what Captain America goes on in this movie is very similar to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But I kind of want to jump into that when we get into more of my negatives here. I had a couple positives of the movie. Sadly, it's not a particularly good movie. I'll just start with that. It really wasn't. It's fairly disappointing.
We're ripping the Band-Aid off now.
Yeah, we're just ripping the Band-Aid off. This was a movie, going into it, I was very nervous going into it, watching it, because it's had so many horrible rumors surrounding it, like 3 months of reshoots. It was actually only like 22 days of reshoots, which isn't even the most reshoots a Marvel movie has gone under. So it just had a lot of bad publicity going into the movie. The trailers I thought were interesting, but they didn't really hold my attention. So I was just nervous going in, and I'd heard some bad things about it. They were all true, but to talk about some of the positives, my first positive is Sam Wilson as Captain America. He does an incredible job in the movie, although the movie's script doesn't give him a lot to work with. He's able to still find moments to feel human and not like the super soldier Captain America that we know so well from Steve Rogers. He has moments to make it his own, but the script sadly doesn't give him enough of those moments to make it really feel like, oh, Sam Wilson's kind of coming into his own now. You know, it's still very much a Marvel movie with a plot that's focused on other things, and then these moments of Sam Wilson having these human realizations and these moments of being Captain America that really stand out, but are just like 2 minutes long. You know what I mean? It's not great. Another positive I have is Harrison Ford.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic in the movie. That's someone who so easily could phone in a performance in any movie he does nowadays, and we're still all gonna love it because it's Harrison Ford. But he legitimately has a good part in this movie, and he has the biggest character arc in this movie, and he actually does a great job portraying that character arc. Portraying, not betraying.
I was going to say, because he's taken over the role of Thunderbolt Ross from the original actor William Hurt.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, so I was curious, like, how does he hold up compared to William Hurt because we've seen him in Civil War. I believe he had a couple of scenes in the Avengers movies.
Yeah, he did. Civil War. He was bigger. He was bigger in Civil War.
I was going to say, he played a much bigger part in that one compared to those ones, but
yeah,
how is he compared to him?
So the movie definitely knows in a similar way. I know you're not a Harry Potter fan or haven't seen him, but in a similar to when the first actor who played Dumbledore passed away, and they ended up having to replace him. Who they replaced him with, I think, did a better job for what they wrote Dumbledore for later in the movies, where he has a bit more action scenes. I can't really see the first Dumbledore doing all those action scenes you see in like Half-Blood Prince and stuff like that.
That's fair.
And so I think this acting change works because they understand who Harrison Ford is and is this, curmudgeon, sweetheart old man. So it's just like they're able to play into every Harrison Ford-ism that we know very well and to create a very likable character. So they know exactly what they're doing. I'd say it's different enough, but also Harrison Ford fits better in this movie than William Hurt would have, and William Hurt fit better in the other movies than Harrison Ford would have. They switched the character up a little bit.
Okay.
And I think all for the better. A new actor comes in. I don't think you necessarily want to keep everything the exact same. Just from an audience member, you're sitting there watching it and you're like, that's someone different. Like, don't lie to me. Like, that's someone different.
Like, at that point, like, it's like, I was going to say, when you bring in, like, an actor to play another character, and it's not like it's like a reboot or any of that stuff, he's kind of carrying the load and all that stuff.
Yes.
So, and from what you've told me, it seems like Harrison Ford does a pretty stand-up job on that. So.
Yes, no, he really does. And then my last positive I have, and this isn't a big one, I just honestly really want to think of three, and I was like, I really got to think of one, is this is the movie after Endgame that's felt the most connected in the MCU, where I feel like we're actually living in a shared universe with other characters, and things that happened in other movies are now directly affecting what's happening in this movie. And specifically, because I'm pretty sure it's in the trailer, the third act of Eternals, there's a giant...
The giant hand,
The
right?
giant hand, I think those are Celestials, to my knowledge, in the Indian Ocean. Of course, Eternals came out in like 2021, and then every movie afterwards didn't talk about this giant thing coming out of the Indian Ocean.
I was gonna say,
and then
that was always so bizarre that none of the MCU, there wasn't even like a newspaper article being like, yo, there's just a hand just chilling right there.
Nothing. You could just tell that they weren't talking to each other when they were making all these movies back to back to back to back. They were just like, oh, here's one, and they didn't work together. This movie goes back and tries to correct some of that, which, you know, I'll move into some of my negatives, but also I think it worked in some parts, especially with the Eternals plot line and how it wraps that up and how it leads into this movie and would make sense. And, you know, it kind of goes in through Harrison Ford's character, but the movie's not really about that. It's just more of like a subplot to get the plot moving.
It makes sense. I would say that's why I've noticed even in the post-Endgame era, aside from, you know, I guess you could say Far From Home, the Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
A lot of the movies were pretty standalone-ish, which some of them it works. Like, you know, I liked a lot of the series, like, say, Loki, Moon Knight, and I guess I could say No Way Home. It made sense to make them standalone because it's meant to be focused on said character. Mm-hmm. But you also have to remember it's kind of like there are other people running around this world. It makes sense, like, you know, why those 3 movies and shows, they're on their own because they're in places or situations where they can't interact with any people.
Yeah.
But when there's cases like with the Eternals, when there's a giant handler coming out of the earth,
Yeah.
you gotta kind of address that and, like, you know, in some way, shape, or form. I'm glad they finally did.
And they did a great job. Genuinely, They do a really good job addressing it. There's still some things left open, for sure, and there's a huge new reveal in the MCU revolved around it, which is kind of cool in my opinion.
Does it involve a certain mutant by any chance?
Slightly, maybe, potentially. But that is where my positives ended. Moving on to the negatives really quickly. It is the story of this movie. And, you know, going back to exactly what you just said, you want the movie to stand on its own. Like, it needs to be its own thing where you don't need to see 18 other movies to see it. But also what made the MCU work so well was the interconnected universe. Iron Man was awesome when people saw it. But then when Samuel L. Jackson came out in the post-credit scene and said, we're part of a bigger universe yet, you just don't know it, everyone lost it.
Oh, I was one
Everyone,
of them.
yeah, I was too.
I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
I pretty much had equivalent of a spaz attack.
No. I lost it. I was so excited. And so I feel like that Marvel has this impossible task of you have to make it its own movie and feel like it's in a shared universe. And you have to balance it and ride it perfectly. I'm okay if movies, you know, this one feels more alone, this one feels more shared. That makes sense to me. Of course, the Avengers movies feel more shared. A Spider-Man movie's gonna feel more single. That works for me. But you have to balance it out. You have to make sure that you still feel like we're in a shared universe where things that happen in this movie will directly affect things that happen moving forward. And that's where this movie, I think, runs into its first negative, is the story of this movie. I can't even imagine sitting in that writer's room and then someone pitched this and went, yep, this is the story for Captain America 4. This is a sequel to The Incredible Hulk.
That's another thing I heard about. It felt more like a continuation of the 2008 Hulk film.
It is. No, 100% it is. Captain America really doesn't have a character arc in this movie. Thaddeus Ross does, Harrison Ford's character. The biggest character arc is a character from The Incredible Hulk. And there's a lot of other things from The Incredible Hulk that happens in this movie. I'm not going to get too much into spoilers, but this was announced, I'm pretty sure. Liv Tyler's in the movie as Betty Ross. Not in the movie a lot at all, honestly. A couple scenes, if that. I don't want to give anything away. But, there's just a lot from The Incredible Hulk that's happening in this movie. And it just baffled me that they decided to tell this story in Sam Wilson's first Captain America movie. And that's what I was saying, where it's like the positives, when every time you do get those moments of Sam Wilson being a human, not being a super soldier, but having to take up the mantle of Captain America, it's riveting, it's awesome, it's deep, it's cool. But then the second, it's just a sequel to The Incredible Hulk for no reason. Captain America Brave New World. If you're a Marvel fan, I take it you've seen it or looked up the spoilers just to know what happens in the story. If you're not, you probably don't care about this movie. This is not the Marvel movie I'd recommend to be your first one to watch to get you into the fandom. It's not a very good movie. Is it the worst Marvel movie? No, I don't think it's the worst one, but yeah, it's bottom 5, bottom 10 for sure, very easily. A very forgettable movie. Honestly, John Carlos Esposito is in this movie. I forgot. That explains that. I mean, the reshoots, you feel like you're looking at Anthony Mackie on a green screen in a separate shot to Giancarlo Esposito's on a green screen. Like, and it's just like it's some of the worst reshoots you can see, and they're so easy to tell. So yeah, I don't know. It's very disappointing to see. I really like Sam Wilson as Captain America. I hope they give him a movie that is centered around him and isn't a Hulk sequel for no reason.
I'll ask you this, though, because what I hear is that the main plot, some plot I heard about this movie is that Ross wants him to kind of reassemble the Avengers. Do you feel like, as that character, do you feel like he has earned that mantle, say, compared to Cap and all that stuff?
That's a tough question. Honestly, I wish that was this movie. I wish that by the end of this movie, I would look at you and go, yes. But the truth is, I can't, because I'm still just baffled where Bruce Banner was this whole movie. Like, I can't even. His girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, is in the movie. Like, where is Bruce Banner?
That's the thing, like that's what I kind of was. I was hoping that this movie would be kind of like a pseudo Avengers, like if Avengers was at 4.5,
almost like Captain America: Civil War.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, granted, because that movie was a flat out like setup, well, its own story, but also a setup to what's the events to come. This. I was hoping that would be something of the sort because they had that sort of gritty espionage kind of story going on, but you had a Hulk sequel without the Hulk.
Yeah, and it's
It's like having Red Skull show up and have Iron Man deal with him. It's just
what
what
are we doing? Yeah, I agree completely. But this actually brought me, when we were talking about it, and you hadn't seen Captain America yet, and we were like, all right, well, what else do we kind of want to talk about for the episode? That's why Superman became super exciting to talk about, because it's so funny to a point. Yes, brought the Superman hats, putting on the hat. It's funny, we're at a point where DC is really, I don't know, DC is still an underdog at the moment. I think people are 50-50 about the Superman trailer, which we're going to get into here in just a second, but Marvel is really on the down low, and people are talking high about Thunderbolts, which is coming out later this year, kind of soon, I think.
I believe
May. And I think that's definitely gonna be better. That movie doesn't have as much drama around the production about it.
James Gunn, who's taken the reins of director and running DC altogether.
Yes,
he is notorious for kind of just bringing light to a lot of like either weird characters or just weird things in comic books. I mean, he's done the Guardians films. He's done the
Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad.
The second one.
Yes.
And I think he just did the show Creature Commander, which is on HBO Max.
I don't know how much involvement he had. I know he at least greenlit the project as the studio head, but I have no idea if he was writing or producing or directing.
I think he was pretty heavily involved because he was...
I hope. I've heard good things. I've heard really good things about it.
I've been trying to watch it. I'm watching like 6 shows right now.
I love animated stuff, so I've been meaning to watch that too.
It's only like 8 or 10 episodes.
Yeah.
So, but
let's check out that trailer real quick.
Crypto. Home. Take me home.
Superman.
So with the Superman trailer, there's a lot in there we just saw that, you're expecting from a Superman trailer. You're seeing Superman, you're seeing the Daily Planet, you're seeing Lois Lane, you're seeing Lex Luthor. I'm really excited for Nicholas Holt's portrayal of Lex Luthor.
He's such a great
I
actor.
love Nicholas Holt. And I'm really excited for David Cornsett's portrayal of Superman. And I'm going to get more into that in a second. But there's a lot of other things you see in that trailer that make you go, what am I watching again? Because there's Krypto the Superdog is in the Superman teaser trailer, which is definitely something not a lot of people would have guessed Krypto would be in the first Superman movie. You know what I mean? If you look at Marvel and where Marvel started with Iron Man, we didn't get like Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy until like a good 5-6 years afterwards. So it's for a while Marvel stayed very grounded to reality. And I feel like this automatically is saying, we're not reality. This isn't our world. And you have to be on board with that because we're going to do things that are not realistic. And I actually really like that. We're at a point with Marvel where I think the realism is part of the problem. They can't do at this point the things they want to do because it's too weird. And they've done decent jobs with introducing Guardians of the Galaxy and introducing some more weirder things, but I don't think the full audience loves it like they do Captain America movies or Iron Man movies or Avengers movies, And so grounding all of these superhero movies in our world, I think limited Marvel 10 years later. And I don't think they knew that. I don't think they were planning for it. I think they thought it was all going to work out. And now we're at a point where they can't go big and extraterrestrial because it's really weird. Every time they do, no one really likes it very much. And there's been a couple instances where it's worked, but a couple. Rather, I think some of the weirder ones, stuff like Secret Invasion or other movies like that, or other TV shows like that, are not very popular. DC is very smart. They are jumping the shark day one and trying to get everyone on board with it. So then at any point in time, after 10 years of DC movies, and we all love these characters, you can do anything still. And it's not going to feel weird. And I think that's a really smart thing that might pan out super well for them, or it's going to backfire in their face and Superman's going to get terrible reviews.
Oh, God, I hope that's not the case.
Me too.
I want this
Me
movie to
too.
succeed,
Me
man.
too,
I was
yes.
saying, kind of go off of that, because I was watching... I was listening to James Gunn talk about the whole universe building, and he even said himself, he's like, they asked him, I was like, what's the tone of the overall franchise? He says, we're kind of taking inspiration from the animated series,
yes.
where it's like he says specifically, it's like, and they asked, like, all right, what about tones for like the overall universe for each film? He's like, it just depends on the character. Like, Superman's going to be a lot more optimistic and hopeful, while Batman will probably be more gothic and brooding and all that fun stuff. Another thing, too, is that when I listen to James Gunn talk about what his inspiration for this version of Superman is, the storyline of an old film called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is an old movie. I think it's with Jimmy Stewart.
Really? I haven't heard that. I've seen the movie.
So, you have seen it?
Yeah, I watched it in film school.
Oh,
yeah.
Pretentious. Anyway, so the big thing is, I believe it is that movie he was referring to, but the whole idea is that Jimmy Stewart's character goes to Washington and he wants to do good. He wants to be that good politician. He finds out there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of stuff going down. Nobody's doing anything, so he has to be the good, trying to like overcome that. And that's what they're saying with this version of Superman, which I'm like, that's what I feel like who Superman is. He's a guy. He's a good moral person who wants to just be good in a world where that can be very difficult to do sometimes.
Yeah, and speaking even more to that, something that is, I think it's fairly controversial. I think people are 50-50 about it, is the underwear is back, or whatever you want to call it. The red underwear outside the suit is back.
There's a funny story I heard about that. So
yeah, I might tell that story. I'm not sure yet, but and the original Superman comics had it, and even the Christopher Reeve Superman had it, and then they got rid of it for the Henry Cavill Superman. And I think a lot of people looked at it as more modern, taking it off and having the suit feel more sleek. But I heard something great, and it was actually originally James Gunn didn't have the underwear outside, the red underwear. He originally didn't want it because he just thought it looked cheesy, it looked a little childish, whatever you want to say. And the actor, David Cornsett, went up to James Gunn and went, no, I feel like we need it. And he's like, no. And David Cornsett said, Superman dresses like a wrestler so kids don't fear him, because he's an alien who could destroy the world fairly quickly, but he wants to seem friendly towards kids, so he dresses up like a wrestler. And take it again, this was in a time period where I think wrestling was a lot more popular than it is today. Not that it's not popular, but I don't think little kids today are like love wrestlers and all that stuff, at least from what I hear. But at that time period when Superman was coming out back in the day, it's a great idea to get kids to look at this person and think to themselves, oh, this isn't some alien who could kill us.
That's what I like about that too, is the fact that David Cornsweet he's very much as passionate about the character. Now, granted, I always hear like stories of like actors who join certain franchises, and sometimes it could be just for the paycheck or how they talk about it. They're kind of just like, yeah, it should be a fun time. But he seems like he's like fully invested into this, and just that statement alone, I'm like, this dude clearly gives a crap about the character.
Yes.
Which I'm someone who is a fan, as you can tell. As a fan who is eager to see this movie, I cannot be happier to hear an actor talk about that, because there's very few characters, or very few actors, I should say, that talk about their characters and willing to make these kind of changes and stick to the original material as much as that. Yeah. I could probably think of a couple. I could probably look it up and find someone to do that, but that's just top tier right there for me.
I agree completely. And then genuinely, I think the last thing I really got to say about the trailer is I think this is a great time for Superman to come out. And I was just talking about Man of Steel. That came out 2013, I want to say. Yeah. And I was about 15 when that movie came out. I liked it a lot more when I saw it in theaters. I thought it was like dark and gritty and all that stuff. I definitely watched it as an adult.
Dark Knight trilogy.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
Oh, dark and gritty heroes.
That was the only thing we can do. And of course, I'm 15. I thought it was awesome and more adult and everything. And as I've gotten older, I've kind of realized that that's not really who Superman is. I think I still enjoy the movie visually, because Zack Snyder's visuals are gorgeous in my opinion.
I won't deny that.
But watching it as a Superman movie, it doesn't really work as a Superman movie. But introducing this character now to this generation, I think is perfect timing, because I think people need a hero like this, and they need to explore it correctly. Making him feel just all powerful and awesome and perfect and everything is going to make him feel so unrelatable. And it seems like from the trailer, you see him, the first shot is him on the ground and he's bloody. It seems like we're getting a Superman that's gonna feel more human at points and feel more like us, even though he's not. And I think that's gonna create a really relatable character for people to get behind for years to come. And the best example I have is Robert Pattinson's Batman. He is the most expressive Batman behind the mask. He looks scared behind the mask. He looks frightened behind the mask. He looks angry behind the mask. Anything. His expressions behind the mask help, at least me personally, relate to Batman as a human. Like, the poor man's just a human out there taking these hits. And so I love the fact that they did that. I hope we're getting something like that with the Superman character, where you can really bring the human emotion out of Superman.
I cannot agree with you anymore with that. It's what I love about... That's why I'm excited to see that, because we haven't really had that optimistic or human version of Superman. I mean, the shots alone, you can tell there were so many times where... There's even a shot in the trailer where you can see David Cornsweet's Superman walking through a crowd, and someone hucks a can in the back of his head. And there's a part of me that was like, and if anybody had those powers that he had...
He'd do something.
Exactly. Yeah. He would have given him a glare.
Yeah. I think that'll do it for us here. Have a good day, everybody.
Here's to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow.